Ahead tonight, why U.S. visa applications were put on hold today. We'll tell you what the U.S. Embassy says about when the application process will resume.
A new IRCA initiative means a big convenience for telephone consumers. The details straight ahead.
And a multi-million-dollar investment by the Water and Sewage Corporation. We'll tell you more. The National Report starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This segment of the news is brought to you by BTC, powered by Lime.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Keish Latterly.
And I'm Kendino Knowles. As always, it's good to have you with us.
Topping the news tonight, U.S. visa processing was put on hold today after the U.S. Embassy's vice counsel was held up on the street yesterday.
Minister of Foreign Affairs Fred Mitchell delivered a speech, or a special communication that is, in the House of Assembly explaining why the interruption, as explained by the U.S. Charge d'Affaires.
The U.S. government informed me this morning that as a result of the injury to its vice counsel at the U.S. Embassy, consequent upon the robbery of that individual while heading to church on Sunday, that there was an unexpected and adverse effect on visa processing in the embassy here in the Bahamas. I've previously expressed our deepest regret and concern at the matter involving the vice counsel, and I do so again now publicly. The matter is with the police and the investigations continue. Unfortunately, however, the embassy says that the absence from work of that officer this morning meant that no visa processing for Bahamians took place today. And the Charge thought at the time of this original conversation that this would be for an unspecified period of time.
Now, since then, Minister Mitchell said the Charge told him that visa processing will resume tomorrow morning. Those people who had appointments today will get calls about rescheduling. Minister Mitchell says there were no interruptions at airports here in the capital or in Grand Bahama due to the break in processing. Meantime, police have arrested a 26-year-old Dorset Alley man in connection with the robbery. Today, the Utilities Regulation and Competition Authority, IRCA, launched the number portability service for operators for landline telephone services. This allows users to keep their current telephone numbers when switching from one landline provider to another. While IRCA is not physically carrying out the service, they are now giving the okay for service providers to do so. IRCA CFO Kathleen Smith says this is a culmination of over 2 years of work with BTC, Cable Bahamas, and IP Solutions International having agreed to participate. IRCA's Director of Policy and Regulation, Stephen Barrow, says this service is limited to fixed lines for now. But when the market opens, Mr. Barrow predicts that it will be a seamless process to transfer this feature to wireless services.
Is that cost can range from a few $100,000 US to as much as 10 million on a large network. Now, I believe we're toward the low end, but I can't say with any certainty what the operators in the Bahamas would have spent. For most operators, they understand that number portability is a key enabler of competition, and as a result, there is, I guess, grudging acceptance that it's a necessary thing, and that it's important as you move forward in a competitive environment. There's also a off-network cost, which is the cost of the service provider. That's relatively small.
Now, IRCA also launched a consumer protection initiative today to garner public sentiment on the draft consumer protection regulations, which address areas including consumer sales and services, consumer obligations, advertising, bill and credit management, and customer queries. Now, the CFO, Ms. Smith, said this came about after a high volume of complaints from consumers, including queries over Cable Bahamas' application for a price increase and BTC's outage last June. Barrow said this will also guard service providers against delinquent consumers.
Basically refers to people who run up debts with one operator and then switch to another to avoid paying those debts. Also relevant because of number portability, but so there are restrictions on churning, and there are provisions that allow operators to share information about non-payment and to refuse service of someone who is churning.
Well, late last year, Prime Minister Perry Christie told reporters that the government was in discussions with IRCA over the possibility of regulating utilities like electricity and water, which would affect BEC and the Water and Sewage Corporation. At the time, he said that there were certain things which had to come first. Now, today, IRCA's CEO, Kathleen Revere-Smith, said that no headway has been made in regard to those discussions, but if it followed through, IRCA would have to increase its human capacity.
The government would have to make the initial step with regards to amending current legislation and developing a policy and start that dialogue with IRCA. So at this stage, there's not been any advancement of that. We have some of the basic capacity, but it would mean that we would have to increase our capacity, our human capacity as well, because while some of the issues are fundamental across the three main sectors, there are some issues that are very specific, and we would have to boost our human capacity.
The Water and Sewage Corporation and BAMR today signed a contract worth $7.5 million. Chairman Bradley Roberts and BAMR officials signed for a turnkey solution for both the required supply of potable water and the design and construction of a wastewater treatment plant on Gladstone Road. The construction of the 1 million imperial gallon per day treatment plant will be carried out by Bahamian firms Nassau Island Development and Emarine Engineering and Construction.
The contractor is expected to commence work on site shortly, and during their construction peak, the contractor is expected to have approximately 150 to 200 Bahamian employed on the project. This facility is being financed by a loan to the corporation from the National Insurance Board.
Part of the development of this water and sewage plant is that we will return sewer or wastewater to the water and sewage plant. They will process it, and they would give us what we will call gray water to utilize in such areas as irrigation, etc., so that we minimize the use of potable water going forward, and we're energy conservation and also environmentally sensitive from that point of view as well.
Now, Mr. Roberts says the agreement will produce a win-win situation for Bahamians and Water and Sewage as it seeks to improve the corporation's financial viability. BAMR's Senior Vice President of Governmental and External Affairs, Robert Sands, says today's signing marks a significant milestone for BAMR, which is scheduled to be opened next year.
The Bahama Agreement, with its underlying guarantees, are a positive step towards the corporation less dependent on government subsidies as we go forward.
The reason for this, people may think that it's fairly advanced, but we have ongoing operations that will be introduced along a timeline. And one of those operations, our golf course, which should be opening, say, second quarter next year, which requires a significant amount of water for irrigation, and that is why the advancement and the development of this plant is so critical to our timeline going forward.
Debate on the 2013-2014 budget continued in the House of Assembly this morning.
Member of Parliament for Seabreeze, the Honourable Hope Strachan, is touting the government's budget as one that is focused on securing the future.
Now, she says the government's efforts to fighting crime, create employment, and secure a stable economic environment are clear and well documented, as she scolded the opposition for its negative views of the budget.
The leader said, and that is their leader said, there was nothing there to address crime. But, Mr. Speaker, if $2 million towards the purchase of additional police vehicles to fight crime is nothing, then I say give us nothing. If providing $175 million for the Defense Force to purchase a fleet of boats under trained officers is nothing, then I say give us some more nothing. Mr. Speaker, if making an allocation in the budget of $8 million to employ 450 additional Defense Force officers is nothing, I say bring me more nothing. If making financial provision for CCTV to be expanded all over our island is nothing, then nothing is what the Bahamian people want.
Member of Parliament for Central and South Eleuthera, Damian Gomez, said the budget seeks fairness in the imposition of taxes.
This budget seeks to be fair in its imposition of taxes, to avoid taxing those who can least afford to be taxed, and to ensure that those of us who are capable of paying taxes pay our fair share of those taxes. No government wishes to impose taxes unnecessarily. And all governments would do so cautiously and deliberately, knowing that taxes are by their very nature, Mr. Speaker, unpopular. Simply put, at some point, we as a country had to face up to the reality that we cannot spend with complete indifference as to how the money which we commit to spend is going to come into our coffers.
In our first look at weather, our satellite picture showing some patchy clouds over much of the 700 Islands, but outside of our studios just now, we have partly cloudy skies. Your temperature 84 degrees, relative humidity 71%, winds out of the southeast at 8 knots, your barometric pressure 1,017.0 millibars, that's 30.03 inches, and it is steady. But stay tuned, temperatures around the Palm Beach Islands, travel and boating forecast is still to come.
Thanks, Basil. Well, Attorney General Alison Maynard Gibson addressed the members of the Constitutional Commission today as one of the final speakers as its public consultative session draws to a close. Mrs. Maynard Gibson touched on a number of issues for constitutional consideration, but she made the country's position on the contentious topic of capital punishment clear. For one, she says the death penalty continues to be recognized as lawful on the law books, especially by the Privy Council, the highest appellate court.
To make and enforce laws which are not in violation of peremptory norms of international law. We reserve that right. The death penalty is lawful in the Bahamas, and by the way, let me just make the comment that in many other countries that are actually calling for us to abolish the death penalty, they themselves keep it on their books for circumstances, as the Privy Council has dictated, are the rarest of the rare or the worst of the worst.
Well, still to come tonight, a special milestone for an exceptional group.
And right at home in South Andros, how descendants reconnected with their roots this weekend. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
July 9th, 1973 was a very special day in the life of a 21-year-old who had just graduated from university. 21 years old, full of hope, full of expectations, full of passion, so much to do, trying to build a new country. When I saw the flag being lowered, the Union Jack being lowered, and our Bahamian flag being raised, it was a source of great pride. In fact, I did cry, like most people out on the park. I cried like a baby. I was there with my fiancé, whom I married the following year. And it was a very special time. I just hope that Bahamians would again revisit that feeling and apply it to today, so that instead of building a country that we had in 1973, they could maintain the country that we've built so far. That's my hope for the Bahamas.
This portion of the news is brought to you by KFC Nassau. KFC Nassau is so good.